When I was a child, I sometimes wondered what it would be like to be dead. I think that's why I was so popular as a kid. I mean, fun to be around. I imagine myself in a coffin. My body is lifeless, and I was cold, and I was lonely. I was desperately lonely. I wondered if that feeling would ever go away. So I asked a Sunday school teacher what was about heaven. He said, "You're going to love it. It's like a picnic that goes on forever with your friends and loved ones. A backyard barbecue that goes on forever." And that image didn't appeal to me much. How long would it take for me and my loved ones to get on each other's nerves? And so I think maybe it was 4 or 5 hours into eternity, and I would have had it. And then what? Well, gradually I became suspicious, skeptical about the package of beliefs that were being handed to me by my family's religious community, and I just went on with life. These thoughts came back to me about 35 years later when my 4-year-old daughter came charging out of her bedroom down the staircase. She was only 4 years old at the time, and she was crying. And through her tears, she said in front of her mother and me, "I don't want to be a thing that dies. I don't want to be a thing that dies." Breaks your heart, doesn't it? I mean, that's awfully young age to be confronting the tragedy of life. She was calling out for help, and I was tempted to tell her to shut up and go to bed. Because she made me a little nervous, but her mother came to her rescue, and she said, "Don't worry, dear, you have a long life ahead of you." And she gave her a hug. Miraculous. Her body just immediately calmed down. Now, I think in our country and other religious territories around the world, a more likely response would be, "Don't worry, dear, God will take care of you." And that's one of many platforms for later discussions about God, the soul, and afterlife. Now, you know the story, and that is if you follow your religious line, that what prophets tell you to do, then you'll end up in a good place. You go into this kingdom of heaven forever. But if you stumble along the way, you might not get there immediately, but you'll get there eventually. And if you don't obey the rules, if you're an unrepentant sinner, then you'll go to eternal damnation. Now, these are not taught to kids as ideas, These are facts. This is the way it is. And when facts of that magnitude are internalized, they're surrounded by, they're protected by feelings, the guard dogs of those feelings, and worldviews, and begins to sort the incoming mail so that views compatible to that, worldviews, they'll stick. They'll be looked at for reassurance. Worldviews that tend to undermine it are pushed aside, ignored, and sometimes even attacked. A candidate for that would be Darwin's theory of evolution. And in some cases, tragically, it's science. Now, I got interested in this near the end of my career. I'm a personality and social psychologist. And fortunately, I had a colleague named Len Hamilton, who's a brain scientist. And we put together a course on the topic of the causes and consequences of soul and afterlife beliefs. It was an exciting course because it forced us to open up, go into history and philosophy and areas of our own psychology, and put together an interdisciplinary course. Became almost a featured course at Rutgers. Now the course is finished. My colleague's retiring. I'm about to follow his footsteps. But we uncovered some really interesting phenomena, and I want to have the opportunity to keep these ideas alive, and that's why I'm here, keeping these ideas alive, and this is a wonderful venue for that. A couple examples I want to give you is, why is it so easy for kids to accept and understand the whole idea that there's a soul and there's an afterlife? Well, to explain why they accept it, they're told to accept it by people who are in charge of their survival. So, they have no choice. But how do they understand it? This is interesting. The way they understand it is they already suspect that something is going to survive their death. Go back to me in my coffin. I said I was cold and that I was lonely. In other words, sort of intuitive that my senses would continue on, and my emotions and my thoughts, they would continue on. Now you say, well, that's because you were weird, fella. Well, it turns out I was in pretty good company. I might have been weird in other ways, but here's some research from the lab of Jesse Baring in Ireland. Kids are shown a little puppet show. Here's my prop. There's a mouse. Mouse is in the field, minding its own business, and a hungry alligator comes by. Crunch, 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 crunch. Kids, is the mouse dead? Yes. Are you sure? Yes, it's all broken. It's all chewed up. Does the mouse miss its mother? Yes. Does the mouse get cold at night? Yes. Does the mouse get hungry? Yes. Even though they know that the mouse can't eat. Paul Bloom at Yale University writes brilliantly about it. He talks about children's natural dualism. It's like naturally separating physical things and psychological properties. Now, quickly, to another level of thinking about this. Human beings have this incredible capacity to be two places at the same time. You've already done that. You're sitting here and you're thinking, what I'm going to have lunch. So you see yourself out there having lunch. Later tonight, I'm going to take a flight back to the East Coast. And I can see I can see myself getting on the airplane and looking for the right seat and getting it wrong and having to be moving. Okay, so I'm there, but now I'm back here. That's how we get through the day, isn't it? We're always thinking and preparing for the next step. So, I think that's what happened to my daughter. She was lying in bed thinking about mental time travel. Her traveling self went too far and came back with the very bad news. Which is good that it was age 4. So this is when it develops. We're not born with this capacity. The brain needs to mature, particularly the frontal lobe and the prefrontal lobe, and that system gets connected with the visual system, because when you imagine yourself, you actually see yourself there. Once it's set to go, at age 4, that's a good times roll. You can imagine going to a birthday party, going to playground, and this time taking the big kids slide, catching a game-winning touchdown pass, one hand, being on giving a TED talk, dying. It's a shocker, filled with dread. Now, with my daughter, it was, don't worry, dear, you're going to have a long life ahead of you. But you see how the soul beliefs in afterlife is a more perfect solution. Yes, you're going to die, but not really, because you're continuing on. Now, throughout history, particularly our ancient ancestors, religion was good for us. It helped them survive because it got them common beliefs, common rituals, common initiations, bonded them to the tribe. Really important. It was not a good idea to walk out in the savannah alone. You need to have that connected to your band or your tribe. And then nature returned the favor by developing brains, our brains, that allow us to be in two places at one time, to think ahead and to plan. And then as we became more and more organized in mostly agricultural communities, the emergence of priesthood, emergence of rulers, chiefs, who said, you know, you not only need to behave yourself in this particular way, because this is the way God wants you to do it, or the gods want you to do it. It will only make you a good member of your tribe, but also will allow you to move into heaven, and if you don't behave yourself, into hell. Now, I mentioned that these are long-standing beliefs. Once they're installed, whether you want it or not, they're still there. They still have an effect on what you think and what you believe, even though you're not even aware of it. Now, I ask you to do what I ask my students to do. And that is sort of knowing that there's different perspectives, different views, different beliefs. And I notice that people with different beliefs, you know what? They don't like each other. Lots of wars are fought over this issue, or justified. That's a big concern for me. And so my solution to it, my approach to it is have people, my students, and I ask you, to talk about what you were told to believe about the soul when you were a youngster. What you were told, and have that conversation with other people. Talk to them about what were they taught to believe. And in that way, we're revisiting something that we learned years and years ago and still control us, and it loosens it up a little bit. You have different perspectives. Gives us a broader perspective. And you may discover that what you're told to believe no longer fits what we know about the world. So I encourage you to do that. And you may even be able to follow the lead of my wife, who said, she directed the conversation to the joys, the sorrows, the beauty, and the awesome opportunities of this life. So engage in this conversation. Do it for me, do it for yourself, and do it for the well-being of our planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.